Hey, how's it going, everyone? In this video, I want to talk about something that I've been thinking about for, I would say, like just about the last year. And it's this idea that I think computer programmers and coders in general, I think in a lot of ways, as much as we want to say we're like these technical engineers and that we're, out solving the world's biggest problems, in a lot of ways, I think we're actually just data plumbers. Computer programmers are plumbers, but instead of plumbing water and plumbing all sorts of stuff around a house or a building, we're plumbing data around a system or around the internet. Now, obviously, it's a little bit controversial to say that, right? Because I think as software engineers and as people who are in this industry, we like to think of ourselves as very technical, kind of elite. We're sort of engineering the future and all these different things. But really, when you break it down, in a lot of ways, we are just plumbers. We're taking data from people, right, through whatever it is, a website, a mobile app, maybe it's through some other type of interface, like an Internet of Things device, right? We're taking data from people. Generally, then we're sending it over into a database, and it sits in the database, and then what do? Well, we take the data that's in the database, and we plumb it over back to the user so that they can see it. Like, really, at the end of the day, when we're talking about, like, the majority of the software that's being written right now, it's literally, that's all we're doing. We're just plumbing data from one place to another. This is actually an idea that one of my developer friends, it kind of brought up to me. This is like a year ago. Shout out to Will Washburn if you're watching this video. Really talented developer. But I remember him telling me this like a year ago, and it's just kind of stuck in my head. And yeah, like, we really are just kind of like data plumbers. I mean, think about what a plumber does, right? A plumber, puts pipes all throughout your house, right? They route all the water and all these different things to different places in your house, right? There's actually a lot of, I think, parallels between like plumbing and computer programming, but that's really what a plumber does, right? And a plumber can go in and they can work on pipes, they can fix problems and all these, in all this sort of infrastructure. And I think that's really a lot of times what we do as coders, right? We're just taking data from one place and we're putting it in another place, whether it's from a database to, some sort of a user interface or, getting data from the user and then storing it somewhere. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to computer programming than just that, than just moving data from one place to another. But the more that I code and the more that I learn about these different frameworks and these different software engineering paradigms and things, like when you're building real apps, I think a lot of times it does just come down to that. And so I guess my question then is like, are we overcomplicating this? Like if the main goal of what we're doing as software engineers, as coders, as developers is just moving data from one place to another, is it possible that we're overcomplicating it? Is it possible that we're just making things so complex because we want to think of ourselves as engineers, because we want to think of ourselves as these like very technical people, when in reality, maybe this is more of just like a simple task that we're doing? I don't know. It's like, this is the thing with computer programming. And look, I'm not trying to say that computer programmers aren't engineers. I'm not trying to say that there's not like some of the smartest people in the world who are doing this. There are, absolutely. And there's a lot of places in computer programming where it's not just data plumbing, right? Building things like operating systems, compilers, all sorts of people writing, the code that kind of runs the world. Like this isn't the type of development that I'm talking about. The type of development I'm talking about is what the majority of people are doing, which is building apps, right? And it's all about data. It's just about getting data from the user, putting it somewhere, and then giving it to someone else. Or just moving this data from one place to another. And this is the thing about computer programming, is that it traditionally was a very technical discipline. It traditionally was like what I would consider an engineering discipline, right? When you're working with these, especially at the very low levels, like with hardware, or you're working with, building things like firmware or whatever, like, yeah, there is like a very, engineering side to that. But nowadays, most developers, like most people who are doing this stuff, are not doing that. They're not working at this very technical level. They are working with very abstract, very high level languages and frameworks. And really all they're doing with those things is just manipulating this data. They're just moving the data from one place to another. Here's a good example. One of the things that beginners, especially students that I've had, have always struggled with is like state management, specifically in front end apps, right? So state management in, whatever, using something like Redux. Let's use that as an example. Really, like at the end of the day, all that is just like, how do we manage the data, right? It's the same task that a plumber has. How do we manage the flow of things through this house, through this pipe system? I don't know. It's just like are we overcomplicating this? I don't know. Like especially nowadays, there's this huge industry of like coding boot camps, right? And people can learn how to code in 3 or 6 months or whatever it is. And then they go out and they're like working on these big apps. It doesn't require this like insane engineering technical discipline. Like I went to college, I got a bachelor's in computer science, and then I got my master's in software engineering. So technically I'm like an engineer, right? I'm a software engineer. I don't see myself as that. Like all I do is just take data from one place and I move it to another place because I'm working with these application frameworks. Like I'm building actual applications that people are using. So I don't know, like, I guess this just begs the question, like, are we overcomplicating it? Are we assigning ourselves these titles of like engineer and technical leader and all these other things, when in reality, maybe this isn't as much of a technical discipline now as it was 20 or 30 years ago. Maybe nowadays, because we're working in such an abstract level, maybe we don't need, to be engineers. Maybe we can just be like developers. And I think the more that we label this as an engineering discipline, at least, and again, I'm not talking about every area of coding, right? I'm talking about building applications, right? Working with these high level frameworks. But the more that we like peg this as an engineering discipline, the harder it is for people to get into it. The harder it is for beginners, and the harder it is for, imagine that you've never done anything technical in your life, or that you suck at math or something like that. And you think that because, well, it's engineering, I can't get into it. It's like, you absolutely can. And this is like when I was teaching this boot camp last year, I had so many students who were coming from just the most diverse backgrounds. These were not engineering people. And yet after 6 months of teaching them, they were able to build awesome software. This is not an engineering discipline like all the way throughout. And the more that we label it as that, I think the more we alienate people, specifically, people who just never saw themselves as engineers. We have a huge problem in this industry of women not coming in, right? And I think a lot of it has to do because we're labeling it as this like very technical, difficult thing. When in reality, those technical skills, I think, come into building an application very little. So I don't know, this is obviously like very ranty, but the more developers that we have in this industry, the better. And I think we need to maybe start to relabel what this is. Like this is the most common question that people always ask me when they're thinking about getting into coding. They're like, yeah, like it looks cool, but isn't it just like I suck at math? Or isn't it just like a ton of math? Dude, you like never use math. Like, I don't know. Look, again, there's some parts of this industry where they are very math heavy and you're using math and it is very technical, but like, if you're working on, a React app, you're building a Ruby on Rails backend, math is never, ever going to come into that. This is like the biggest misconception that people have about coding, is that it's this technical math-based thing. It's not. I mean, at the very low levels, of course it is, but like when we're working with these abstract frameworks, it's just not. So I don't know. I think that it's about time that we start to shed some of these stereotypes. I think it's about time that we start to shed some of these ideas that, coding is only for these technical elite or for these engineers. It's not. We need more artists. We need more people who are creative. We need more people who come from different backgrounds to come in and write software, because right now this is such a narrow industry. There's only like, it's the same type of people that are writing the code all over the world. These people who, see themselves as engineers, who see themselves as technical people. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not necessary. Like anybody can learn, anybody can learn how to build an app. Anybody can learn how to build a website. You don't need math. You don't need to be technical. You don't need to be an engineer, and you can build awesome stuff. So that's really, I think, the central message of this rant is like, can we maybe start to shed some of these stereotypes? Can we maybe open this industry up for more people to come in? Because the more developers that we have, the more brains we have working on building the things for the future. And, you know, I think the better it's going to be for everyone. So yeah, just to wrap it up, are we just data plumbers? Is that it? Like, not all of us, but like, are most of us who are out building apps every day and, you know, setting up API endpoints and building forms and are we just plumbing data? Is it that simple? And if it is that simple, then why are we preventing so many people from entering this industry who could really add to it because we're, you know, claiming ourselves as engineers and as technical and all of these different things? I don't know. So look, we need engineers, we need math people, we need all these smart people, but we need the other people too. And the more that we alienate them, then the worse the industry is. So I guess that's my message. Let's open it up a little bit, right? Okay, so if you like this video, you can leave a like. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, let's get a conversation going. So leave a comment, and I'm reading all the comments, so I'll be able to see that. But otherwise, yeah, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this got your brain thinking a little bit, and I'll see you in the next video.